Good morning and welcome. We're here today to discuss the Cellphone Jamming Reform Act. I'm honored to be joined by Congressman David Kustoff, Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin, and correctional officers and professionals from state and local governments across America. Thank you all for supporting this important legislation to keep criminal activity off our streets, out of our neighborhoods, and away from our communities. When criminals go to prison, they should not be able to pose a threat to public safety. However, because of contraband cell phones, convicted criminals continue their illicit activity while sitting in a prison cell. In Georgia, a major prison drug ring used contraband cell phones to move more than 14 kilos of meth and nearly a kilo of heroin into the greater Atlanta area. In South Carolina, prison inmates running a sextortion scheme targeted hundreds of our troops, leading to the tragic suicide of several victims. And in New Jersey, an inmate used a contraband cell phone to arrange an assault on his ex-girlfriend and the murder of her new boyfriend. Contraband cell phones in prisons endanger the general public as well as the correctional employees who dedicate their lives to keeping Americans safe. Lieutenant Osvaldo Albarrati, a Federal Bureau of Prisons correctional officer, was killed by a group of inmates because of his work to seize and stop the flood of contraband into a detention center. Incarcerated criminals used a contraband cell phone to contact the gunman who took his life. Within prison walls, contraband cell phones are dangerous weapons. For too long, we've turned a blind eye to this glaring public safety threat as crimes are planned, facilitated, and ordered by convicted criminals already serving a prison sentence. No more. The Cellphone Jamming Reform Act will allow state and federal correctional facilities to use targeted cell phone jamming equipment in prison housing facilities. The precision of this jamming equipment will render contraband cell phones useless for criminals in prison without interrupting the normal communications of law enforcement and emergency first responders in the area. State officials will have full discretion as to where and how this jamming equipment is used in prison facilities, thus providing local correctional officers and law enforcement with the tools they need to keep Americans safe. We should pass the Cellphone Jamming Reform Act to keep cell phones out of prison cells and crime out of our communities. Thank you all for being here. I'm now pleased to turn over the microphone to Congressman Kustoff.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Cotton. Good morning, and I want to thank all of you for being with us today as we today in the House of Representatives will introduce the Cellphone Jamming Reform Act. And I'm glad that we're being able to do this today. I want to thank so many people, all the correctional leaders, the Correctional Leaders Association, the American Correctional Association, our state attorney generals, our governors, and so many others across the nation who are supporting our efforts. I think this is a simple issue. I think it's one we can all get behind, and frankly, it's a no-brainer. It really should not be possible for people behind prison bars to order hits on people, to conduct gang activity, to traffic drugs while behind the walls of the prison. The extent of this coordinated criminal activity carried out by inmates, it's a serious threat to everyone. Those who guard and protect those in prison, as well as those in our communities. In my home state of Tennessee, we had an inmate who used a contraband cell phone to organize and orchestrate a drug conspiracy by shipping packages full of drugs to his girlfriend. Now, this is outrageous. You can tell these stories and hear these stories in all 50 states across the country. I'm a former United States attorney. I was honored to serve as the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Tennessee. And I know firsthand how dangerous this activity is and how prevalent it's become. if we want to stop crimes from behind bars, then we've got to allow state and federal prison officials to jam these signals. When criminals go to prison, their days of calling the shots are over. They shouldn't be able to do it from behind the prison walls. If there is no cell signal, there is no crime. And so it's critical that the federal government support, defend, and provide the necessary resources for correctional facilities to operate effectively and to ensure the well-being of the public. And that's why we are introducing the Cellphone Jamming Reform Act today. By preventing criminals from conducting operations from behind bars, we can crack down on crime in this nation, and we can importantly protect inmates, the guards, and the public at large. Congress should act now, because each and every day that we wait, innocent lives remain at risk. And I appreciate all of our colleagues here today, and especially appreciate a man who has been a friend who I served as a U.S. Attorney with and is now the Attorney General of the state of Arkansas, Attorney General Tim Griffin. Tim?
First, I want to thank Senator Cotton, Representative Kustoff for bringing this bill back up. It was shocking to me that it didn't pass the first time. It's fundamentally common sense. I was speaking to our leadership at the Department of Corrections, the state police in Arkansas yesterday. We're begging for this bill to become law. So you may ask yourself, who could oppose this? I mean, we know what the problem is. Who could oppose it? Well, let me give you a couple of names. It's people like Samuel Hartman that opposes it for sure. Samuel Hartman is back in prison now. He's serving a life sentence for rape. He escaped one of our prisons in Arkansas. And the entire ordeal, his escape was like something out of a movie. It was all planned via cell phone. So he communicated via cell phone with his wife and his mother. He arranged for a pickup time when he was doing garden duty in a facility. He got out of the facility. He met his wife and mom in a car, which was armored with bulletproof protection. I'm sure he ordered that from his cell phone. They took off on their escape, went to a boat ramp where they had jet skis waiting for them. This is for real. This was all organized via cell phone. They got on the jet skis and escaped. They were found in West Virginia by U.S. Marshals 17 days later. That was all done by cell phone. That was Samuel Hartman. There are many others like Mr. Hartman who oppose this bill. Antoine Simmons, he organized a takeover of a maximum security unit at one of our prisons. It was all done via cell phone. We have found CSAM, child sexual abuse material, on cell phone contraband in our prisons. We've had individual prisoners orchestrate the extortion of money out of a mother outside the prison by threatening to kill that lady's son if they didn't get the money. All of this is done in prison. And I will tell you that in February, we had a serious threat group leaders study within our prisons, and we found that the 230 most dangerous threat group leaders had 308 multiple possession of cell phone violations. These are leaders of the Bloods, the Crips, the Aryan Circle, the White Aryan Resistance, and the Gangster Disciples. Here's the bottom line. We know what the problem is. We know how to fix it. It's about time we get this done. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Frank Strada. I am the Commissioner for Tennessee Department of Corrections, and I want to thank Representative Kustoff and Senator Cotton for letting me be part of this today. And as I said, as the Commissioner of the great state of Tennessee, I oversee the care and custody of over 20,000 incarcerated offenders and 5,000 staff. And this bill represents and will provide an additional safety measure for the men and women who work tirelessly each and every day to protect communities from the public dangers that we face in a correctional environment. And having the ability to jam cell phone communications in a prison environment will create a safer workspace for the staff and a safer environment for the inmate population to engage in rehabilitative and education programs crucial to their successful reentry in our communities. This bill will reduce a constant threat we face with inmates' ability to make unmonitored calls and continue criminal activity during their incarceration. This bill will greatly reduce the hazards of contraband and create a safe and a workspace for all. To Representative Kustoff and Senator Cotton, we appreciate the time and attention you have put forward in this bill. The support of leaders like you and other members of Congress truly show that you care about corrections and the job that we do each and every day, and we appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you to all of the correctional leaders and officers that we have here today to advocate on behalf of the cell phone jamming reform bill. I'm now happy to open it up to questions. Yes.
Thank you, Senator. On this bill that you have here, is there any effort to address the cost of landlines? Obviously, some people use cell phones because of the cost of landlines in their homes. And second, on the Signal chat, there are, of course, new chats published today by the Attorney in full that shows that Michael Waltz added the journalistic chat. And if you look online, publicly available information on the defense policy states that any information pertaining to laying out military strikes, timing, people involved in the operation is classified as secret. So the Secretary of Defense has break the law here?
On your second question, no. I haven't read the story yet, but my aides have shown me what was apparently released this morning. There was no locations listed there. There were no sources of methods. There's no specific target. Certainly there was nothing called war plans, which was an embellishment and exaggeration by a known left-wing partisan opponent of the president. On your first question about landlines, do you mean landlines inside of prisons? So I'll defer to some of our technical experts here, but the unique problem of cell phones, obviously, is that they're movable, they can be hidden, they can be used, therefore, to target other inmates, correctional officers, or innocent civilians outside, rather than force correctional officers into arduous, almost impossible, daily, even hourly routines of searching for cell phones. The bill would allow them to put a jamming mechanism over housing units only to ensure that cell phones are not being used in an inappropriate way inside of those housing units.
Hey, I'm Brian Sterling. To answer your question, I'm a director of South Carolina Department of Corrections. In South Carolina, a cell phone costs about $7,000 to $8,000. A minute phone call costs 5 cents. You can talk to your family for 85 cents a day for 25 years before you would get to that $7,000 or $8,000 number. So that just doesn't hold water anymore. That argument is just not factual. We also have tablets now so they can talk to their family members in their cells. So that's not a problem either. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Do you think the Secretary thinks that acted appropriately on this?
I think we're still getting facts. I've got faith in Secretary Hedgepeth. I know the men and women in uniform do, and most importantly, President Trump does.
And I would just add, I think Secretary Hegseth, and more importantly, President Trump, acted appropriately in finally taking action against outlaw rebels in Yemen. I know many in Washington are scandalized by this story. What I'm scandalized by is that for 15 months, Joe Biden left our sailors on the Red Sea like sitting ducks, and he allowed these rebels to shoot continuously at Israel. And I think what we shall focus here on is not the way this was communicated, but the effects that were achieved against adversaries of the United States and Israel who are also a cat's paw of Iran. That's what I think was appropriate, and that's what I applaud not only Pete Hegseth for and Mike Waltz for, but most importantly, the Commander-in-Chief, Donald Trump.
Mr. Chairman. Is there anything left for the Senate Intel to look further into in terms of the signal method or consider this closed in the
I don't think so. As we discussed yesterday at our hearing, to the extent there was any allegation of classified information here, that was not information that was coming from either Tulsi Gabbard or John Ratcliffe. So as far as I know, it's outside of our jurisdiction. Again, I haven't reviewed every single line that's been posted this morning. I'm sure that many people will be calling for investigations, but again, what I think is most important here is not the way this information was communicated, but the actions that were taken to actually attack the Yemen rebels who had been targeting our sailors in international shipping and our friends in Israel and Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates for more than a year without any serious repercussion from Joe Biden.
Going back to the cell phone issue, clearly this is something that you all have tried before. What do you think is the current environment in the FCC and also on the industry side?
So the industry has long argued that this technology is not mature, it's rudimentary, it could lead to inadvertent blocking of first responder signals or persons who live near prison sites or who are driving down the road next to it. The technology, since we first introduced this bill, has increased greatly down to very precise targeting. So the correctional leaders we have behind us could tell you we're not even talking about entire prison campuses. We're talking specifically about housing units inside of those prisons. So I don't think industry's objections anymore hold water. We look forward to working with the FCC if this bill is passed to make sure that it's implemented in a careful and deliberate way that solves the problem that our correctional leaders have inside their prison without having any unintended consequences. David or anyone else?
Just briefly, Senator Cotton said the technology is really advanced in terms of jamming. And I think we can all agree that if people lawfully have cell phones, they should be entitled and be able to use and get a signal. The programming with some technology is you can program lawful numbers from within a prison or a jail that can make or receive calls. But if there's a contraband cell phone, and obviously that number is not authorized, it doesn't get a signal. So the technology is advanced a lot over the last several years. It will continue to advance. And the fact that you can protect the innocent people, those who should be able to lawfully use cell phones and not harm them, to me, makes this issue a no-brainer. Yes, ma'am.
I think
Okay.
there was a young
Yeah.
woman in the back that had a question for you, Frank.
Yeah, but we'd like to get the support of the carriers. And obviously, the carriers will weigh in. We want to hear what they have to say. But if we can do what we talked about a few moments ago, and that is identify people who are in jails or prisons, guards, other personnel who lawfully have the right to be able to use their phones, allow them to have access, and essentially cancel out the contraband cell phones, that protects everyone. So we want to hear from the telecoms. We want them to join in, and in the end, there's no reason for anybody to oppose the bill. Thank you.
I just want to throw down this that what the DoD and agencies will probably see what's set now to kind of guide what they do in the future. Do you feel that in the future, people at DoD, people at intel agencies, when they know about attack plans like this, should be sharing that information on group chats, on Signal ahead of time? Is that an appropriate way for them to be disseminating that information? That could
Well, as I said yesterday, Signal is authorized for use by the Biden administration. As Director Ratcliffe, the CI, testified, it was loaded onto his devices the very first day he was at the office. And the information that was disclosed this morning did not include locations, it did not include specific targets, it did not include sources and methods. It was certainly not war plans as it was exaggerated or embellished to be said. I'm sure the administration, like all administrations, will continue to review how it communicates inside and deliberates consistent with the requirements of operational security and presidential record-keeping rules. But I think here the real story is the incredibly successful strikes in Yemen that has protected our sailors and protected our friends in Israel and international shipping, and that's where we should focus. Thank you all.